Welcome. Thank you all for coming. I'm Mark Crispin Miller. I'm a professor of media culture and communication at New York University. We're here today on the steps of the City Hall in New York in anticipation of the upcoming anniversary of 9/11. And we're here to try to help dispel a widespread misconception. Many people say, in a dismissive spirit, that the so-called 9/11 truth movement is out there arguing that 9/11 was an inside job. People like Glenn Beck say this all the time. Well, to say that would be to put the cart before the horse. What the 9/11 truth movement is about is much simpler than that. It is to call for a new investigation. There is ever-growing evidence that the 9/11 Commission's report was grossly inadequate as an explanation of what happened on that horrific day. I'm going to introduce today's speakers just by making a brief historical point that's really relevant. And it's one people need to hear because it wasn't really covered at the time. Even if there were not tons and tons of quite vivid evidence that the official explanation is inadequate, would already be grounds for questioning the report that the Bush-Cheney administration worked like dogs to prevent the commission from coming into existence in the first place. Historically, after all our major catastrophes, from the Titanic and Pearl Harbor to the assassination of John Kennedy and the Challenger disaster, it took hours for an official commission to be formed. Well, the White House took 3 months to respond to 9/11, and their first response was to pressure Senator Tom Daschle into not having a Senate investigation. Dick Cheney told him, "We will tag you as Al-Qaeda sympathizers if you even do this." Well, since the congressional investigation was the basis for the 9/11 Commission study, this was a great way to slow things down to a crawl. Now, I could go on and talk about the measly budget that the commission was given, $3 million. The Challenger Disaster Commission got $50 million. They were restricted to a year for doing their work. It was later extended to 18 months. Their subpoena power was limited. Documents were withheld. Witnesses had minders accompanying them to the hearings. It goes on and on. Well, the fact is that the 9/11 Commission report is not questionable only because of the administration's pointed efforts to prevent it from happening. It's also highly questionable because its conclusions are often preposterous and contradicted by a wealth of evidence. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to start by introducing our first speaker. It's Dr. Niels Harrit, Professor Emeritus of Chemistry at the University of Copenhagen.
Thank you. It is an honor and a privilege for me to share this opportunity with Mr. Daniel Sunyatta and Lieutenant Colonel Shelton Langford and DJ Green Arrow to announce the formation of Scientists for 9/11 Truth on behalf of the organizing committee. Scientists for 9/11 Truth joins the diverse groups of professionals who also have expressed mistrust in the official version of the events of September 11th. Among the established organizations, we find architects and engineers, firefighters, intelligence officers, lawyers, pilots, veterans, media professionals, medical professionals, political leaders, religious leaders, and scholars for 9/11 truth and justice. Scientists distinguish themselves by the study of the laws of nature, and every scientist can subscribe to one fundamental condition for dealing with our physical environment. You cannot fool nature. Nature is always right. This fact has been the basis of 400 years of science. It is also the basis of the criticism of the official accounts of 9/11 coming from today's scientific community. Everybody knows the two airliners slammed into the Twin Towers, which subsequently collapsed. Surprisingly few know that the third skyscraper, 7 World Trade Center, also known simply as Building 7, almost half the height of the towers, with a base the size of a football field, completely collapsed straight down into its own footprint 7 hours after the Twin Towers. There were 2 airliners, but there were 3 skyscrapers. All 3 towers were destroyed in an unprecedented fashion, since no steel-framed high-rise building has ever collapsed due to fire before or after 9/11. So, just from simple statistics, it is more than highly improbable that an event which has never before been observed should occur 3 times on the same day. In spite of these hopeless odds, the official investigators have tried to make probable an explanation that the World Trade Center towers collapsed due to ordinary fires. In the opinion of scientists for 9/11 Truth, their attempt to provide an acceptable explanation is an utter failure. The official reports from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, commonly known as NIST, violate all the principles of a scientific investigation. The reports from NIST are flawed to such an extent that they must be characterized as deliberate attempts to cover up the real cause of events. For example, a simple observation of the video footage of Building 7, when compared with pictures of known controlled demolitions, reveal an obvious and striking similarity. It has never happened that the collapse of a building which showed all the features of a controlled demolition turned out not to be a controlled demolition. Many scientific investigators have supported the claim that the 3 towers in the World Trade Center were brought down by controlled demolition using explosives and incendiaries. We refer to the references provided in your press kit. Also in the kit, I urge you to look at the peer-reviewed scientific article. In this work, detection and characterization of particles of still reactive thermitic material in the pulverized remains of World Trade Center are described. Thermite can serve as an incendiary capable of cutting steel structures by means of extremely high temperatures. But the thermite reaction can also form the basis of high-tech formulations of explosives. This investigation, with conclusion drawn for our own observations, is but one indication that high-tech thermite was applied in the controlled demolition of World Trade Center. Among the other observations, only a few can be mentioned here. For example, there are a great many eyewitness testimonies from cleanup workers of molten iron in the rubble pile. Ordinary office fires can never reach temperatures high enough to melt iron. NASA measured extreme surface temperatures on the rubble pile at ground zero in the days following 9/11. Again, these observations can only be explained by thermitic reactions. Furthermore, the rubble continued to burn at high temperatures for literally months. It took New York Fire Department 3 months to put out these fires. Only ongoing thermitic reactions can explain this resistance to water and fire-suppressant chemicals. No less remarkably, the United States Geological Survey and the R.J. Lee Group Incorporated independently described finding millions of iron microspheres scattered throughout the dust that covered New York. These tiny spheres testify to temperatures that could melt droplets, that could melt iron under such conditions that could spray into a mist whose droplets condensed before hitting the ground. There is no way these iron spheres can be created during ordinary fires. They can only be produced by thermite. A number of peer-reviewed publications in your press kit describe unusual findings which are only compatible with the application of thermitic materials. It must be stressed, however, that all this evidence does not exclude the use of thermitic explosives. It is very probable that more conventional explosives were also applied in the demolitions of World Trade Center. But NIST has not tested for residual explosives in the World Trade Center dust, nor have they looked for other signs of explosive impacts on the building elements, in spite of the fact for everyone to see that huge steel beams and girders were hurled out horizontally during the collapses of the Twin Towers. Only explosives can produce the forces required to hurl heavy beams and girders hundreds of feet through the air. Such testing for explosives is routine in fire investigations, and its omission is not an act of negligence or oversight on NIST's behalf. On the contrary, NIST has been repeatedly requested to perform a general analysis for remaining explosives in the World Trade Center dust, as they are committed to do according to the Guide for Fire and Explosion Investigations put out by the National Fire Protection Association. NIST has openly refused to follow the code. Beyond sharing a profound rejection of the official technical reports from NIST, the members of Scientists for 9/11 Truth also recognize the social, political, economical, cultural, artistic, and ethical implications of the 9/11 events. As you run down the list of more than 60 scientists who have signed our petition prior to this official launch of the organization, you will notice that the vast majorities of signatories are retired. This situation reflects a depressing development in the academic world since 9/11. It has become a very bad career move to discuss the physical aspects of the 9/11 events and express any concern or discomfort with the official version. Previously, universities and other academic institutions were havens for free speech, and as such were one of the indispensable pillars for a blooming and decent society. Now they have been gagged to such an extent that our very civilization is at stake, no less. Scientific arguments will play an important role in the outcome of this battle. But while we do not have many young scientists on board yet, we have Sir Isaac Newton on our team. Never have there been any exceptions to Newton's laws in the world we live in. Newton is always right. So, in more than one sense, this is a battle between the past and the present for the future. Many of the senior scientists who have signed up for our organization have children. Some of them have grandchildren. In 10 years' time, these grandchildren will be old enough to ask, "Grandfather, grandmother, which side were you on?" And we will answer them, "I was on your side." Thank you.